The gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Bush, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. St. Louis and I thank you for convening this important hearing. Director Wray, I want to pick up where we left off last week when you testified before the House Judiciary Committee, the FBI's treatment and surveillance of Black protesters and its failure to respond to a white supremacist insurrection. So let's start on June 1st, 2020. Protesters were marching for justice and for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor outside of the White House in Lafayette Square. Early that evening, law enforcement stormed the square, firing rubber bullets, tear gas, and other chemical agents into the crowd. Director Wray, did the FBI issue a formal threat assessment during the summer 2020 protests for racial justice? Yes or no?
Here right now, I don't remember which intelligence products we put out in the summer. I would say that those individuals who were engaged in crowd control did not include the FBI, because that's not our contribution to the effort. We don't do the crowd control piece. That's other agencies.
So there was no formal threat. You can't say that about January 6th either. You're saying that is not the FBI?
No, there's two different parts of your question. One was the formal threat assessment issue, and the other was your description of tear gas and that kind of thing. And what I was saying on the second part, namely tear gas and engagement with protesters in that regard, that's not the FBI's role in place.
Right. We just said law enforcement. I only said law enforcement. I just asked if there was a formal threat assessment.
Right. And so then on the formal threat assessment part of your question, we did not issue what I think most people are describing as a quote unquote formal threat assessment related to January 6th. That is a term that I think is normally used in connection with the so-called NSSE or SEER event. As far as the summer, I just sitting here right now, since I know this is a hearing on January 6th, I just don't remember what products or intelligence assessments we did or didn't do over the course of the summer.
Thank you. It's clear to me that the FBI took considerable action against people non-violently protesting police brutality, which is because police killed Black people, yet failed to respond to known white supremacist insurrectionists seeking to attack the Capitol and overturn the results of an election. A few hours after law enforcement cleared protesters out of Lafayette Square, a Cessna jet took off from an airport in Manassas, Virginia, and flew a 7-mile circle around DC. Director Wray, there have been reports that this plane was operated by the FBI and was used to surveil protesters. Is that accurate?
Congressman, I can't say sitting here right now exactly what any specific FBI aviation asset could have been used for. I will tell you we have very specific policies that govern all that from the Justice Department. And I have no reason to believe those policies weren't complied with.
As the director, that's not something that you would know?
Well, we have, as you may know, Congresswoman, every FBI field office has aviation assets and they're used all the time. So I can't sitting here right now tell you what a particular Cessna may or may not have been used, even if it was ours, which I don't actually know to be the case.
So let's talk about what was difficult to assess for your agency and what was treated as unverified intelligence. An online post that included maps of Capitol tunnels said, Congress needs to hear glass breaking, doors being kicked in, and blood from their Black Lives Matter and Antifa slave soldiers being spilled. Get violent. Stop calling this a march or a protest. Go there ready for war. We get our president or we die. Nothing else will achieve this goal. How did the First Amendment prevent you from monitoring threats of violence from white supremacist groups ahead of January 6th, but not prevent you from surveillance of people protesting in defense of Black lives during the summer of 2020, those protests?
Well, Congresswoman, first, the Norfolk report, which is the one that you're referring to in your quote, is something that we took seriously and shared immediately with the Capitol Police and our other partners. Second, when it comes to white supremacist violence, which we describe as racially motivated violent extremism, is something that I think we have taken seriously, which is why I said in my opening and reminded the committee that back in July of 2019, we elevated that threat to our highest threat priority. And that's why we have doubled doubled the number of investigations into this kind of activity that you're
Right, but
describing, and in fact,
This is something that
tripled the number of arrests, tripled the number of arrests in this
Reclaiming my
case.
time,
Yeah.
reclaiming my time. This is something that just happened that was not addressed.
The gentlewoman's time is expired.